you know this. I'm sure even the viewers know. When you get on that bus, you don't know what time you're arriving.
Mercy, hello. How are you, first of all?
I'm good, Cece. We're out here thriving.
Thriving, working from home, doing the things, ne?
Not to sound insensitive, but really trying to, see the silver lining and do what we to get through this period.
Yeah. So good to finally be talking to you. You know, we've been wanting to do this for like a long time. So guys, I get to introduce you to Mercy.
And congratulations on your launch, by the way.
Thank you. I'm just excited to introduce to widen my network and widen my tribe and just like introduce people to these awesome, amazing individuals that I get to call friends. So guys, Mercy is an economist, a creative who writes short stories. You guys will be seeing those very soon, so watch the space. This is really a great sister in Christ that I've been blessed with, especially in the professional environment. So I'm excited to introduce her to y'all and to chat with her. And specifically because like Mercy is not only a Black woman killing it in her profession, but actually you're in a very interesting cross-section space, Mercy, which I think is very relevant for our AG community. Because it focuses on inclusion in a traditionally exclusionary space. That's kind of why I wanted to actually to talk about that specifically. But first, tell us about yourself. Who are you? Where you from? What drives you, girl?
Wow, loaded question, hey. I always find these questions a bit awkward. So like, talk about yourself, okay? Where do I begin?
Talk about yourself.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm originally Zambian, born and bred in Zambia.
Somebody.
It's a country up north, about 4-hour flight from Johannesburg to the capital city in Lusaka. I was born and bred there. Grew up in a huge family. It's not unusual. This is Africa, huge family, lots of siblings, and I was always full of laughter. Did my education there, worked a little bit, then moved to Cape Town because I really felt something coming from a developing country. I mean, it might sound cliche, but your experiences and everybody around you, their experiences is there's always some form of exclusion, and the degree varies depending on how privileged you are. So I have relatives who, are across that value chain. Some that are extremely disadvantaged, staying in remote rural areas. Some that are a bit better staying in your township types, and others that are a little bit more privileged. But growing up in that environment, and also coming from a family, I don't come from a family, that is an affluent family, but having those experiences kind of drove me to pursue more in terms of my career. And when you look at economics, usually the trend in Zambia is, okay, you work for corporate, you work for a bank, but that has never been a passion of mine. Sounds cliche, but never been a passion of mine. I've always been driven to contribute to making Africa rise, not be that underdog that everyone talks about, but to contribute to make us rise. And so I've always leaned towards development. I've always leaned towards human development, how we can change and transform our societies, how we can create real wealth, generational wealth, not just, I'm employed hand to mouth, month to month of living, but actually thrive as a society. Yeah. And so with that, having worked for some time, I moved to Cape Town because I wanted to study, at a good university, but also one that was located where the issues were.
Right.
So I didn't want to go forward because there's no way, in my opinion, no offense to anyone who's traveled to the UK abroad to study development or African development.
That's always been a debate. Like, do you stay to do this, or do you like go away and like learn from somewhere? Yeah, it's been a debate. I know.
No offense. I'm not judging. I'm not judging. I'm just speaking I just want to throw in a disclaimer. This is the time of cancel culture and all that stuff. So everybody, don't misquote me. I'm talking about my drive and what I want. Yeah, was to be where the action is, to be where the issue, and to learn right here on the soil. So I moved to South Africa to pursue my master's, and at that time I was more development oriented. Right. So a lot of and previously my jobs were around policy, working with government to economic policies, etc.
Yeah.
And then I got introduced to impact investing, which for me was a game changer because I've never been a believer, no offense, in the aid financial aid model to lift Africa out of poverty, or Africans out of poverty, because all sorts of reasons, dependency, we've been receiving aid since this, 50s, 60s, we're still at the same place. It is dependency, there are all sorts of issues with that. And so I've always been looking for some kind of route to development that creates agency and a level playing field. And when I was doing my master's, I got introduced to impact investing, which is a sort of development finance. And I just loved it. And I thought, wow, this for me solves two problems. Not only does it solve social economic issues, but it also creates that level playing field. Handout. It's saying these people have capital. I have an enterprise or a great idea. Let's create a contract or an agreement. I will give you your returns. You give me capital. There's a level playing field, and that's what I loved about it.
And that's essentially one of the reasons why I wanted to interview, because here in the AD space, as you know, right, we're all about problematizing some of the ways of living and being that we've kind of socialized into and come to accept as normal. So oh, that's the way things are. We want to tear the lid of those underlying narratives and dream together for alternatives as well, especially for Africans especially. So I mean, in the spirit then of problematizing, how is impact investing upending some, I think you've kind of mentioned a little bit, but maybe dig into a little bit more how it's upending the traditional models of investing, even just some capitalistic assumptions essentially which underlie those.
So impact investing, I'm just gonna go into the definition, just break it down a bit. And maybe before I get to that, look at me just jumping the gun. I'll go back. What traditional finance is. Usually traditional finance is on this spectrum. So the left of me, it's about returns. It's about profit. That ecos 101 for my ecos folks, you know what I'm talking about.
Scarcity, all of that.
The scarcity. The firm is out to profit maximize at all costs.
Sure.
And that is your pure. And the cost
can be human lives, can be anything.
It can be human life, it can be the environment, it can be anything, as long as you are getting that dough, that cash, you are getting that coin. So that's traditional finance. That's your traditional finance. I think we're all aware of capitalism, where it's just about the returns. It's just about the returns, anything that gets you those returns. Then on the complete right of me, right of the spectrum, the NGOs, which is the complete opposite of what the traditional finance firms are doing. It's helping people, getting financial aid and helping people, but there's no returns associated, there's no profit associated. It's basically just helping people, which it doesn't have it's not a bad thing. There's a place for that in our society. There's a place to have charity, philanthropy, and there's a place for NGOs and the work that they do. But those are the opposite sides of the spectrum. And then impact investing is in the middle of that. It's saying we can help people, we can care for the environment, but we can also make money doing it. And that's an attractive model for various reasons. And one of the reasons for me, like I said, is you're not only sorting out what NGOs are doing,
right,
in the sense of solving socioeconomic challenges in society, because these are businesses that impact investing invests into are businesses that are providing solutions to problems in our communities.
Right.
Making transport more efficient. I grew up, and even up to my master's, even now, riding on minibus taxis, the minibuses or matatus, wherever you are, or all sorts of names that you can give them. So, and when you get on that bus, you know this, I'm sure even the viewers know, when you get on that bus, you don't know what time you're arriving.
Also, what time you're arriving? What about even what time you're actually getting on, bruh?
You don't know when the bus is coming.
And just, generally, even infrastructure, when it comes to transport systems in developing countries, that's a whole nother thing which I'm very passionate about.
It's a whole, yes.
Yeah.
So there are different issues in society that we're going through today. And mostly those issues are a result of majority of people or the masses being shut out of systems, being excluded. And the systems that are there focusing or providing services for the few elite who can afford them.
Right.
And go deeper and deeper into why that's the case, but I'm not sure that this is really not a lecture. So you guide me on
That's
clarity.
great though. I feel like you're literally flowing in like what the questions I wanted to ask you, because I was gonna say, for example, like what are some of the systems, again in the spirit of like problematizing and critiquing, like what are some of the systems that you feel like need addressing, which for example, I mean, and this is something that I think is quite relevant in the impact investing space, you know, systems that make it easy for like a foreign, usually white man armed with a Harvard degree to come and help Africa. Like what makes it easy for him to do that versus like, you know, Africans, like you're saying, solving African problems? Like what are some of those institutional, cultural and economic barriers basically for African innovators?
Sissy, it comes down to one thing: money. It comes down to one thing: money. And which is why they say, you know, they say that there's lots of things. When there's some research that's been done by the World Bank on households, and the top basic needs that households in Africa and other emerging markets need, which is your food, your transportation, affordable health, education, etc. But on the bedrock of households, of people accessing these services that are necessities, is money. It is financial inclusion. It is financial empowerment.
Right.
You know? And so the difference between that white man coming with his Harvard degree, you know, to Africa and being able to do all these amazing opportunities, and me or the next person or you or the next person who's born on this continent, is money. It is that financial inclusion. It is the ability and the freedom, the financial freedom to decide what you want to do, when you want to do, and what you want. And impact investing, or the area that I work in, also addresses that. It addresses trying to empower, you know, local Africans, empower them to have access to products and services that they need, access to credit, you know, to grow your business, you know, or to access to insurance, to weather those hard storms, you know, when things hit, as they always do right now. We're going through COVID. There's so many challenges. Do people have access to that? You know, can they get the credit? Can they get loans? Do they have access to savings? A lot of, you know, a lot of privileged people are able to set up emergency funds. And I've gone to a couple of seminars where it's like, set up that emergency fund. But the question that should be asked is, do people even have the ability to save and set up an emergency fund? Those are the questions. So those are the things impact investing is doing. All the work that I'm in is it's investing in entrepreneurs who are finding innovative ways to address these problems, and create products and services to cater to the ordinary person, not those elite few that traditional systems have been catering to, but masses that have been excluded from the system. You know, affordable products.
You're saying
no problem. Go. Talking too much.
No, I completely hear and I resonate with what you're saying, but like I wanted to kind of like play devil's advocate a little bit and be like, you know, what about, I mean, this is probably another conversation, but you know, what do you think on the statement that like we can't entrepreneur around bad leadership, essentially, or bad policy? You know, like, is innovation really the only answer to our problems? Like now we want to head into, you know, the alternative imagining stage. So like, what would you say to like that statement, like very, very quickly?
Is innovation the answer to our problems? No, because of things.
Because we've got leadership issues here.
Yeah, it's multifaceted. Someone once told me, you know, there was an interesting, not once someone was saying, I think there was an interesting debate on Facebook where people were going off on economists. People always go off on economists, and they're like, hey, you guys, why aren't you, there's so many economists, but why are we still at the same level? No, development is a multi-dimensional problem. It's multifaceted. It's a sociology problem. You need sociologists because you understand what's happening in the of structures. Yes, culture, how structures, social capital of structures, how families, units, communities have been working over generations, why they are the way they are. It is a political science problem, you know, the science of leadership. Economics 101 talks about scarcity and redistribution of resources, etc. But you need leadership, good leadership, to redistribute those resources wisely. It's a political science problem. It is an economics problem. So it's a multifaceted thing. So no, innovation in its own is not going to answer the world's problems. I mean, I don't even have an answer for that because there are just so many issues.
So much. And ultimately, I suppose you're also dealing with people, right? You're dealing with human lives and decisions, and there's
exactly.
No there's just no like one way you can say this is how people will react to this kind of stuff.
No, exactly.
So I mean, but heading into now, just really just trying to alternative imaginations, essentially, what forms of economy or just generally, I mean, like you said, it's not just one thing, right? It's not like the economy or the political, but what kind of forms of let me just say governance. I don't know if that's even the right term. Are you most looking forward to, right? I mean, we can say globally, but I mean, specifically we're looking at our continent right now. What kind of excites you, and what do you think could happen, or just dreaming even further into the future? What would you love to see?
You know what? I'd love to see more of what I'm seeing now. I would love to see Africans, creating businesses, creating companies that span generations, that employ thousands of individuals, that generate real wealth for this continent. That's what really excites me, because for me, poverty will not be eradicated by, I mean, let me just backtrack it, because again, I'm not shooting at any solutions out there.
Right. No.
There are different degrees. So the first degree for me is some country coming up to set a factory in, let's say, South Africa, to employ South Africans textiles. That's the first level. It's great because somebody, people were better off, they're better off getting that monthly salary than sitting at home not getting anything. But for me, the highest degree or game changer would be creation of businesses, creation of companies. And companies that are sourced from this continent, not only serving this continent, but serving the entire world. That is my vision for the continent. That's what gets me excited. It's about that entrepreneurship, it's about businesses, and it's about wealth creation.
And almost like Africa not just being on the receiving end of things all the time.
No.
It will give us players in the global space.
Yes, being players in the global space, not just growing cocoa and just growing cocoa and just like the first processing of cocoa. I want chocolates, African chocolates coming out from Africa. Jewelry coming out of Africa, African clothes coming out of Africa. That's what I want to hear. And I want more trade happening between us. You know what? We've also got a unification problem in Africa. As of 2-3 years ago, I think, only 12% of trade happened, intra-trade happened in Africa within the continent. How can all these 54 beautiful states, resource-rich, only trade 12%? And we're trading the other 88% is with countries outside the continent. Guys, we have to get serious.
And I feel like you're touching on so much now that I mean, I hadn't even anticipated, but I'm just there's this book that I've been reading called Sacrifice of Africa, and it's basically a political theology of Africa. And it even talks about obviously the founding stories of the nation state, and how, I mean, if you look at Africa and the way that we relate to each other as different countries versus, let's say, countries like in Europe, how even the EU, it's so easy just to travel within, the EU, and obviously the trade that happens within there. Whereas in Africa, I mean, from like you say, trade to instances just traveling within Africa, and how all these people, and it's just so difficult. There's no I don't understand why is that a thing? Why is it so hard to just the unification that even within us is so difficult to get down to?
Yeah, no, there's so many reasons. Some of them I don't even have the answer to. No. But it is, I think it comes down to, in general, us embracing the Pan-African spirit. So long we have often focused on our differences. Oh, you're this tribe versus this tribe, and that makes you different from me. No, it doesn't. And I think that is also blown at the macro scale when it comes to our leaders and them closing borders and immigration because you're scared that this particular these countrymen will come and steal your resources, or you're not working from a holistic kind of approach. So I don't have a lot of answers for that. There's several things that I could say are guesses as to why it is the way it is. It's taken Europe to do that. It took Europe a long time to get to where they are.
It took I mean, like, you're absolutely right, Mercy. Like, it's not even a question, a thing of like having answers, but I think it's worth a conversation to say, like, I mean, even the formation of like Europe and how the way it kind of like happened more organically. But for us, obviously, our story and our history is much different. To kind of like talk about how we got to where we are. But I think those stories are very interesting and quite important for us to delve into if we want to actually kind of come out with the thing of why we like this. Why don't we actually just work together? I think it's like it's a worthwhile like conversation to have. Yeah, I mean, like, it's interesting that even just like you brought it up, and I also love how you brought up Pan-Africanism, and I know that you're very passionate about that, but also as a Pan-African woman.
I am a Pan-African. I'm unapologetic of saying I am Pan-African. That's what I identify with.
Come on, and tell me like where did that come from, and like what do you, even in that area, like what are some of your imaginings there?
Wow, I don't know. I think it's just my roots are where I came from. I think Zambian, we were always taught to identify first with I'm not taught, I guess exposed, or show the benefit of identifying first with the country than, with the subtle differences in tribe. I wouldn't even say that, even though despite Zambia has about 72 tribes, 72 ethnic tribes.
Sure.
But we were taught that, that's great. You can celebrate your culture, your individual tribe culture, but identifying is first with the entire country. And I think for me, growing up in that environment where you're taught to, you're taught unity and the benefits of unity and what that means and why we should be unified. It just came as natural to kind of extend that to the rest of Africa and say, you know what, Bantu, what's Bantu? We're all Bantu. Yes, the languages might be different, but we all relate. We have the same struggles, the same problems, very similar histories. There's no difference. Those arbitrary borders that were placed by somebody else. We're taught about Ghana, South Africa, Kenya. It was part of the education as well when you're young. It was part of the education to understand the history, to understand the people. So I think it comes naturally just to extend that.
Yeah. And Merce, just like a second last question. But like, yeah, how does your faith also play into this? Like, how does your faith kind of like help you to really see the world, specifically the industry that you're in, right, in the general sphere of economics? But like we're saying, we're talking about Africa, we're talking about like the social state, we're talking about the politics. Like, how does like your faith really help you to see both the good, but also the possibilities as well?
Wow, that's a really good question. Cece, bringing the hard ones.
Come through. I know you're ready. You stay ready, girl.
Hey, I don't know about that, but I'll try to answer that as best as I can.
Yeah.
One of my favorite verses is, because I'm a grace child. I love grace. That really defines my whole my belief system. It's about grace, and I'll take you to a good verse of mine, John 10 verse 10. I guess that's what I would answer your question or sum up what my belief is, part of my beliefs or belief systems. And John 10 verse 10 says, if I can just read it, the thief does not come except to steal, to kill, and to destroy, but I have come that they may have life and that they may have it more abundantly. Yeah. What abundance of life, Sissy? It's life without need. Yeah. It's life of inclusion, everything that we've talked about. It's about trusting God to supply.
Sure.
Okay? Trusting Him for everyday supply. I don't have food in my pocket. I don't have money for school fees. It's about that total trust that even though your senses, your eyes are telling you, oh, I have nothing in my bank account, you're believing God for that cash. You're believing God that the provision will be there. And it also ties beautifully into Matthew, I think it's 25 verse 7. Let me just check that really quickly.
These verses are just coming flowing out of her, guys.
These verses I live by, Sissy. I just need to check my Bible. It talks about what God is doing for the flowers in the field, the birds in the air, how he looks after them, how he cares for them, and they don't even, they live from day to day.
Yeah.
What more you, the precious child of God, what more you, his master creation? And so when I look at kingdom economics, whereas in this world, there are those with capital that we still depend on or rely on for some sort of redistribution. When I look at God, is all that has been unlocked. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what your story is, where you come from, whether you have $50 million or you have $50 or you have 50 cents or 5 rand. It doesn't matter. God is not looking at what you have in your pocket. He's looking at you as a human being. He's saying, I love you and I'm there to protect you, to provide for you, and to include you.
Yeah.
To include. And what's also important is, I think, so for me, when it looks at the difference between that word and what I would hope, looking forward and looking at the way that we live is, as Christians, is to really trust God, to really trust God for that provision. But also not yourself and say, look, I only have 5 rands, what can I do? Because there's one saying that I love, and I don't know who created it, but it goes something like this: God can use a basket to disgrace the bucket. Which means it doesn't matter. We're not relying again on those on people with lots of money or if they're part of a movement.
Somewhere in Corinthians, he takes the foolish things of this world to despise, to expose the folly of the wise or whatever. Yeah, I resonate.
Exactly. Yeah. So we're not relying on those people. It's great if they join the movement, the people with lots of money. But each one of us has a part to play. Each one of us has a part to play. If you have some sort of privilege, some sort of power, you have a part. You can be used, or you have a part to play. You can be used or for God to help somebody else, to help empower somebody else, to help provide for somebody else, to help include somebody. So it's also that shared growth. It's that trust and it's that shared growth. Because if I'm trusting God for my provision, it means that I'm not going to be stingy with my time or my money. I'm going to trust him regardless of what I have in my bank account, and I'm going to just leap and also help this person next to me. So there's no scarcity in God's kingdom. Economics 101 doesn't exist.
Oh, God, I'm so excited to hear that.
It's abundance. There's just so much for everyone, and everybody relies on everybody and empowers everybody by his spirit, by being empowered by God.
Yeah, and I mean, essentially, I was really going to ask you that, like, there's a final question, like, how can we then, as the people who are calling ourselves kingdom people, how can we really live into that? But I guess you've really covered it. Like, it's us knowing that, like, we serve a God of inclusion. So we serve a God who is about enoughness, right? So we also, it's about bringing people in and saying that, how can we live in this kind of like enoughness and this almost like the common good, right? This economy that kind of that shuns the kind of the consumerist culture that we live in, and it's a challenge because it's a challenge because it's
a challenge.
I can't lie and say listen, I can do this tomorrow.
No, it's a journey. It's a journey that never comes to an end, and I don't think it should be looked at as an end. And one thing that I even forgot is love, because you can't be doing things without God's love. And that's where you're saying it's a challenge, because it's easy to love somebody who is good to you. We can all do that. What is difficult is to love somebody who has fundamentally hurt you. And I'm not talking about those who do it unintentionally. I'm talking about even if you've ever experienced someone who intentionally was set out to hurt you. And you need to love them. You need to include them. You need to even, go overboard for them. That's difficult. That's a difficult thing. But with God, with God's empowerment, everything is possible. It's a journey.
And really, Mercy, like, I love how you really rooted it in such practical things, because I mean we see also in the parables of Jesus, right? Like when it's talking about the kingdom, it's very ordinary practices. Like you're saying, it's like bringing people in. It's about sharing, right? Like I love how he always loves, like, I think he just love the party, guys. Like, like a dinner table, like where everyone is welcome, everyone has a seat. It's enough of it. So I really appreciate that, and I'm so thankful for people like you who can really kind of like shift our direction and perspective a bit and say, hey, actually, how about we take this is my sphere, but like let's actually look at it from God's perspective and say, what is God saying about this, and how can I practically fit into this? So, guys, I'm sure people are gonna be so blessed by just like hearing your story.
I'm blessed by you, Cece. Thank you for having me on this platform.
Thank you for chatting to us, Mercy. Oh my word. Okay, I think this is it, guys. Like, bye.